I heard the door open before I saw him. It was a small sound. A key turning, a shuffle of shoes, the soft thud of a bag hitting the floor, but it carried something heavy behind it. The kind of sound that told me Noah wasn't just tired. He was defeated. I didn't look up right away. The game was still on, some background noise I wasn't really watching. But I could feel the shift in the air, like gravity had changed in our little apartment. The couch dipped under his weight as he dropped down beside me, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my voice light. No answer. Not even a grunt. Just a long, slow exhale that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest all week. That was the first sign something was off. Silence. Noah was never the talkative type, but he always had a few words to throw my way after work. A sarcastic comment about his boss, a question about dinner, something. Tonight, nothing. I finally muted the TV and turned my head. His neck was tense, shoulders locked like he'd been holding them up for hours. The veins along his arms stood out, his fists half-clenched. Even the way he breathed looked tight, measured. Noah was a construction foreman, the kind of guy who could lift half a wall by himself and still have energy to cook dinner after. Seeing him so small, so still, made me uneasy. "Hey," I said quietly, "you okay?" He didn't look at me, just rubbed his face and mumbled, "Something's not working, man." I frowned. "What do you mean? Like, work stuff?" He shook his head. "No. Me." That pulled me upright. I set my beer down and studied him. His jaw locked, his eyes fixed on some invisible spot on the floor. I'd known Noah for 3 years, lived with him for 2. He was solid in every way. Physically, emotionally, the kind of guy who just handled things. Hearing him say something was wrong with him felt strange. I leaned back, giving him space. "You want to talk about it?" He didn't answer right away, just tilted his head back, staring at the ceiling like maybe the words were hiding up there somewhere. "I don't know," he muttered after a while. "Lately, I just don't feel anything." That hit harder than I expected. "Like numb?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get up, go to work, come back, go through the motions, and it's like I'm watching my own life from the outside. Nothing's exciting anymore. Not food, not people, not..." He hesitated, eyes flicking toward me and then away. "Not even things that used to be." I tried not to pry, but the concern must have shown on my face. "Sounds like burnout," I said carefully. "Or maybe stress. You've been pulling long shifts." He gave a humorless laugh. "Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I'm just broken." There was a silence after that. Not the awkward kind, more like a fragile one. Like if I said the wrong thing, he'd retreat completely. So I didn't joke, didn't push. I just nodded, trying to offer quiet understanding instead of advice. "You're not broken," I said eventually. "You're just tired. Happens to everyone. Especially when you never stop." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw how drained he was. The dark circles under his eyes. The weight behind them. Noah had always been the image of strength. Broad shoulders, calm voice, easy confidence. But tonight, all that was gone. What was left was someone raw, unguarded. "I don't know how to fix it," he said softly. "Maybe you don't need to fix it right away," I offered. "Maybe just stop trying so hard for a bit." He gave me a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You always make it sound simple." "Because it usually is," I said, half smiling back. "You overthink everything." "I work in construction, Matt," he said, his voice hoarse but lighter now. "If I don't overthink, things fall apart." "Fair," I admitted. "But you're not building a house right now. You're rebuilding yourself. That takes different tools." That earned me a quiet snort. For a second, it felt like we were back to normal. Then silence again. I let my eyes drift back to the TV. Still muted, still meaningless. But I couldn't focus on anything except the man sitting next to me. There were small things about Noah that always drew my attention, even when I pretended not to notice. The way his shirt clung to his shoulders after a long day, the faint scent of sawdust and soap that followed him everywhere, the way his laughter sounded when he finally relaxed. I'd learned to keep those thoughts to myself, to file them away in some quiet corner of my mind labeled off-limits. But tonight, with him sitting so close, something about that invisible line between us felt thinner. He rubbed the back of his neck and sighed again. Sorry, I didn't mean to dump that on you. Don't apologize, I said. That's what roommates are for, right? Listening to each other spiral. That finally got a small grin. You've been spiraling lately? Only when the rent's due, I replied. He laughed under his breath. The sound was short but real, the first genuine one all night. When he leaned back, the couch creaked. His arm brushed against mine, just enough to feel the warmth of his skin through the fabric. I didn't move. Neither did he. You ever feel like you're running out of fuel? He asked quietly. All the time, I said. But that's what people are for. To remind us we still have something left. He turned his head slightly toward me. And you believe that? Yeah, I said, holding his gaze. Especially right now. Something flickered in his eyes then. Gratitude, confusion, maybe both. For a second, the room felt heavier and softer at the same time. He looked away, stood, and muttered, I'm gonna shower. Go ahead, I said. When he disappeared down the hall, I stayed where I was, staring at the blank TV screen. The sound of water started a minute later, steady, rhythmic, and I sat there wondering what exactly was happening to him, and why a part of me cared so much. It wasn't just concern. It was deeper, quieter, and harder to explain. Like watching someone strong finally let the world see the cracks, and realizing how much you want to be the one to hold them together. I didn't know it yet, but that night would be the start of something neither of us could name. Something that had been waiting in the silence between us all along. He came out of the shower in a plain t-shirt and sweats, hair damp, the steam following him like a cloud that hadn't decided to evaporate yet. The apartment felt warmer, quieter. He didn't sit right away, just stood by the kitchen counter and stared at the fruit bowl as if it might offer advice. I muted the TV again. The clock over the stove ticked a little too loudly. You want tea? I asked. He nodded and I put the kettle on. It's funny how certain rituals feel like bridges. Fill, flame, wait. We used to talk easily across that bridge. Tonight he lingered on the other side, watching the water come to a boil like he was bracing himself. I looked some stuff up, he said finally. About work. About me. His jaw worked, trying out the words before letting them out. About why I've been off. Steam curled from the kettle. I killed the flame and poured. Okay, I said carefully. What did you find? He didn't answer right away. I passed him a mug and he wrapped both hands around it like it might steady him. He stared at the surface, thought better of talking to the tea, and lifted his eyes to me. Some of it was noise, he said. You know the internet. Fix yourself in 10 steps videos. But there was other stuff too, things about burnout and body awareness. Somatic therapy. Learning to pay attention to what your body is trying to say when your head won't listen. I nodded slowly. Makes sense. I used to be good at that, he said. Knowing what I needed. Pushing when I could. Resting when I had to. Lately, his mouth pressed into a line. It's like I can't hear the signals anymore. Everything's static. He moved to the couch and sat across from me, not quite on the far cushion, not quite near. His knees touched the coffee table. He set the mug down and stared at his hands. Some of the stuff I read talked about grounding, he continued. Breathing exercises. Relaxing certain muscles. Letting the nervous system reset so you can feel something. People said it helped them reconnect. Feel normal again. He said it without drama, and that somehow made it harder to hear. The word normal landed between us with a soft thud. What does normal mean for you? I asked. He thought about it. Waking up and wanting the day. Laughing at dumb things you say. Cooking because food tastes like something again. Not feeling like I'm behind glass. His voice went quiet. Looking at myself and recognizing the person looking back. We sat with that a moment. The air conditioner hummed to life, then clicked off. The apartment sounded like a held breath. Have you considered talking to someone? I said gently. A therapist? He nodded. I wrote down 2 names. Haven't called yet. That's a good step. He looked at me, as if measuring how much of himself to show. There was one thing that kept coming up, he said. About tension. People carry it in different places. Shoulders, jaw, chest. Some carry it lower. Can mess with sleep, appetite, mood, everything. There were these exercises, release and relax, breathe and notice. People said they felt more present after. Like physical therapy for your emotions, I said, trying to keep it light but not flippant. He huffed a tiny laugh. Yeah, something like that. He rubbed the heel of his hand against his sternum, then stopped, self-conscious. Look, I know this is awkward, he said, the words starting to rush now that he'd opened the gate. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I don't want to do this alone. The room seemed to tilt, not dramatically, just enough for me to feel it. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. What do you need from me? I asked. He swallowed. I'm not sure, he said. A witness? I don't know. Someone I trust to remind me to breathe when my head starts sprinting ahead. Someone who can keep me anchored if I get embarrassed and want to quit. It was the first time he'd used the word trust out loud. I felt it in my chest, low and steady, like a second heartbeat. Okay, I said, and let the word settle. I can do that. He nodded, relieved but still tense. I read about simple stuff, like lying down and noticing each muscle one by one, letting the belly soften, the hands unclench, paying attention to the breath, not forcing it. People said when they slowed down enough, it was like a switch flipped, not fireworks, just a sense of being inside their body again. He risked a small smile at himself. I sound ridiculous. You sound like someone trying, I said, which is brave. He glanced away and back, like he hadn't expected the compliment to land. You won't judge? He asked, and there was something raw in the way he said it, something that didn't match the broad shoulders and the steady hands that usually built other people's certainty. Not my job, I said. My job is to sit next to you and not make jokes when you're being serious. That would be a miracle, he said, and I could tell he wanted to laugh but was still worried he might crack if he did. I shifted on the couch, giving him the near cushion without making a big deal of it. He moved over. Our knees didn't touch, but they hovered close enough to feel the air warm between them. How does this work? I asked softly. I don't know, he said. I thought we could start with what I read. Just quiet, breathing, noticing. Maybe you could talk me through it if I start racing. Keep me grounded. Remind me to slow down. Like a coach, I said. Like a friend, he countered. And that word, friend, sounded larger than usual, like a bridge you could drive a life across. I nodded. I can do that. He exhaled, and some of the tightness left his shoulders. I know this is a lot, he said. I know I'm not good at asking for help, but I trust you, Matt. More than anyone. There it was again, and this time it went deeper. I felt myself react. Something tender. Something I didn't want to name yet. I kept my voice steady. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. He nodded, eyes shining in the low light. He rubbed his palms on his sweats, suddenly shy. If it feels weird, we stop, he added quickly. I don't want to make anything strange between us. I wanted to say the truth, that things had been strange for a long time, only in quiet, beautiful ways neither of us had acknowledged. The way I noticed his laugh before I noticed the punchline. The way he stood at the kitchen window in the evenings, sun on his skin like a blessing. The way he listened when I didn't have the words right and somehow understood anyway. Instead I said, "We'll go slow." He nodded again, relieved. Okay. He shifted back against the cushions and closed his eyes, like he needed darkness to tell the truth to his own body. I watched his chest rise and fall. His breaths were shallow at first, then deeper. The room cooled. The city sounds outside softened into a far hum. Can you talk? He asked, eyes still closed. Sure, I said quietly. What do you want to hear? Tell me to breathe, he said, an embarrassed smile touching his mouth. All right, I murmured. In through your nose. Slow. Let your shoulders drop as you exhale. Don't force anything. Just notice. He followed, and I followed him, counting in my head, matching his rhythm. After a minute he opened his hands, palms up on his thighs, like releasing an argument he couldn't win. Some of the tension left his jaw. What else? I asked. Name what you notice, he said. That's what the article said. If you can name it, it stops being a fog. I swallowed. Okay. I noticed the hum of the fridge, the draft under the window, the way your breathing is getting slower. A pause. I notice that you're safe. He nodded. Say it again. You're safe, I said. His chest rose on the words, and for a breath or two I could almost see his shoulders remembering how to be shoulders and not armor. He kept his eyes closed, but the corners softened. Now tell me to unclench my hands when I forget, he said. Apparently I do that. You do, I said gently. Let your hands soften. No need to grip anything. Not even this moment. He laughed, a small sound. You're good at this. I'm reading off the teleprompter in my soul, I said, and he shook his head, smiling with his eyes shut. We stayed like that for a while. Simple instructions, simple noticing. When his breath went shallow, I reminded him to slow down. When his shoulders crept toward his ears, I told him to let them drop. When his jaw set, I said, unclench, and he did. The apartment felt different. Less like a box we sat inside and more like a place that held us up. At some point he opened his eyes. They looked clearer, like he'd stepped out of fog and onto a road. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. We let the quiet be part of the practice. Finally he spoke, voice low. Thank you. For what? For not making me feel ridiculous. You don't, I said. You feel human. He studied my face and something passed between us. Gratitude, yes, but also a question neither of us asked out loud. The air felt charged the way summer air feels before the first drop of rain. Held, expectant, gentle and electric at once. Can we do this again? He asked. Anytime, I said. We can make it a thing. Tuesdays, trash out. Thursdays, breathe in. He snorted. Add it to the chore list. I'll make a spreadsheet. Of course you will. We smiled, but it didn't break the spell. If anything, it settled it. He leaned back, and I could tell he was tired in a different way now, the kind of tired that comes after releasing something heavy. He rubbed at his sternum, softer this time, as if greeting himself. I still might call one of those therapists, he said. I think that's a great idea, I replied. I'll remind you if you want. Please do. He stood, then hesitated, then didn't move at all. Matt? Yeah. I meant what I said about trust, he murmured. I don't say that easily. I know, I said. That's why it matters. He nodded, eyes glinting, then headed to his room, hand trailing the hallway wall like he was letting the apartment know he was still here. The lamp cast a soft circle around the couch. The tea had gone lukewarm. The kettle clicked as it cooled. I sat there with the door half closed and the night full of a quiet I didn't want to disturb. Nothing dramatic had happened. No grand declarations, no orchestral swell. But something had shifted all the same, subtle as a new star in a sky you thought you already knew. The moment ended without fanfare, unresolved in the way living moments often are. But the air felt changed, uncertain, magnetic, like we had found a language we didn't know we could speak. And now every silence might be a sentence waiting to happen. The days that followed were careful. We moved through the apartment like two people on a narrow staircase, flattening against the railing to let the other pass. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic. Just a new quiet that had weight to it. I cooked more than usual. He did the dishes more than usual. We traded small chores like apologies. When we spoke, it was about ordinary things. The weather, the delivery that went to the wrong building, the neighbor's cat that kept treating our balcony like a vacation home. We were fine if fine meant not looking too long and not asking too much. But every now and then I caught him. It would be quick. I would glance up from my laptop and see his eyes already on me. Sometimes from the kitchen doorway, sometimes from the hallway mirror, sometimes from the couch when the TV light flickered across our faces. He never looked away fast enough. There was always a heartbeat in which the gaze held, then softened, then dropped. A lingering look that held a question he was not ready to ask. I pretended not to notice to give him a way out, though it left my chest buzzing like I had swallowed a hive. On the fourth night, rain slid down the windows like a slow curtain. The air smelled of wet concrete and the eucalyptus soap Noah liked. He came home later than usual, shoulders damp, hair pushed back by the hood he never wore. I was at the table, a bowl of pasta steaming in front of me and a second bowl waiting with a fork in it, because patterns are sometimes easier than invitations. He paused by the doorway, took in the second bowl, and gave me a look that was mostly gratitude and partly relief. He sat. We ate. Metal on ceramic became our conversation for the first few minutes. Halfway through, his fork slowed. He pushed the pasta around, not quite playing with it, more like composing a thought. When he spoke, it was to the bowl. I feel like I keep missing the step, he said. I set my fork down. Meaning, there is a stair in me that used to be solid, he said, searching. Now when I step on it, I feel the drop. I start to expect the drop. So I keep walking around it. That worked for a while. Now I am tired of walking around it. The rain tapped the window as if to say keep going. Where does that step sit? I asked. He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. All over, he said. Work makes me second-guess what I could do with my eyes closed last year. My body feels like a tool I left in the rain. I stand in the mirror and the person looking back feels familiar and also far away. I say I am fine because people look relieved when I say it. Then I go to bed and lie awake trying to recognize my own heartbeat. He lifted his eyes and finally looked at me. I think I lost something I did not know I could lose. Confidence. Want. The part that meets a day and says yes. I leaned back, giving his words space to land. When did you realize it had gone missing? He thought. It did not vanish in one night. Faded. Like a streetlight that takes longer to turn on each evening. I nodded. That is the hardest kind of loss. If it shattered, you would notice. If it fades, you doubt your own noticing. Exactly, he said, and the relief in that one word told me how few people he had said any of this to. I let a beat pass. Can I pitch something? I asked. You may pitch, he said, managing a small smile. Start simple, I said. Before you try to grab the big answers, grab the small certainties. Things that are true without you having to perform for them. A shower. A walk in air that smells like rain. Cooking food you know you like. Music you forgot you loved. Sleep without judgment. Breath without fixing it. He listened the way he listened to schematics. That sounds like nothing, he said. And also like the only thing I can do. That is the point, I said. The loud parts are already shouting. You do not need to shout back. He leaned his elbows on the table and pressed his fingers to his forehead. I hate that I need help to remember basics, he said quietly. I hate that you think needing help should be a source of shame, I replied. He let his hands fall and looked at me straight on. The question in his eyes had changed shape. It was not can I trust you, but can I allow myself to be someone who needs to? Tell me something obvious, he said. Something you know about me that I have forgotten. You are good, I said without hesitation. You are steady even when you doubt yourself. You listen more than you speak. You do not promise what you cannot deliver. When you cannot deliver, you tell the truth and then try again. Your crew respects you because you do not throw your weight to prove you have it. You can carry a door alone, but you never make a person carry their mistake alone. He blinked like I had read a manual he did not know had been written. How do you know all that? He asked. I live here, I said. I watch you. The way you watch me when you think I am not looking. He startled a little, embarrassed and amused at the same time. You noticed. I notice a lot, I said. I am not proud of how much, but I am not ashamed either. The rain thickened, a steady drum. He pushed his empty bowl toward the middle of the table as if clearing space for a different kind of meal. The lamplight softened his features. He looked less armored than I had ever seen him. Can I admit something ugly? He asked. Please do, I said. It usually turns out to be human instead. He took a breath. There is this rule in my head about masculinity, he said. No one wrote it down. I do not remember deciding to believe it. It is just there. Be useful. Be strong. Be fine. Do not need. Do not ask. Do not show the parts that shake. He shook his head, frustrated. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud. It still feels like law in my bones. That is because you learned it in 100 small lessons, I said. Your bones are not wrong for remembering. Your life gets better when you teach them new lessons. He let that sit. What does that even look like? Like tonight, I said. Like asking instead of pretending. Like letting yourself be seen by someone who will not punish you for it. He lowered his gaze to his hands and turned one palm up like he was reading a map. Do you ever get scared of needing people? He asked. All the time, I said. The fear is not proof you should not. It is proof you are built to care what happens. He looked up. And what if they leave? Then you will hurt, I said. And you will still be you. That is the part one think you are afraid of losing. The you that remains. He took that in with a slow nod. When we sat on the couch the other night and you told me to breathe, something in me untied a knot, he said. I did not even know I had been clenching that hard. It was not fireworks. It was almost nothing. But the nothing felt like a sky clearing. That is not nothing, I said. That is a beginning. He smiled, not wide but true. I am grateful, he said. I do not know how to say it without sounding dramatic. Say it how it comes, I said. I will survive the drama. He blew out a small laugh and scrubbed a hand over his face. Thank you, he said simply. For the pasta. For the talk. For not making me feel like a broken appliance. You are not an appliance, I said. You are a person. Those are harder to troubleshoot and worth the effort. He pushed back from the table. Walk? He asked, pointing with his chin toward the rain-streaked window. In this, I said. We have jackets, he replied with mock authority. We did. We put them on and stepped into a night that smelled like wet leaves and cold stone. The street was glossy under the streetlights. The rain had softened to a friendly mist that did not try to send us home. We walked without a plan, letting our feet choose the route and our shoulders drift close enough that our sleeves occasionally brushed. Neither of us commented on it. At the park, we sat on a bench that the trees had half-sheltered. Water stitched the lake with tiny silver needles. Somewhere across the grass, a dog barked at the weather and then forgave it. The city hummed beyond the trees, a distant engine that did not need us. He tilted his head back and took a long breath. I used to come here early on weekends, he said. Before the city woke, I would run the loop and feel like a clean page. You can have that again, I said. Maybe not the same version, he said. Maybe a new page, smudged a little, might be better. Smudged pages are honest, I said. They prove a hand was here. He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had that low honesty I was starting to associate with these new conversations. I keep thinking about that word you used, he said. Safe. I waited. I felt safe the other night, he said. Not because nothing could hurt me, because you would not. That is new for me. Not new as in I have never had good people. New as in I let myself lean on the fact. I did not second-guess it. I did not search for the catch. He turned to me, rain silvering the line of his jaw. I trust you, Matt, he said. More than anyone. There was no tremor in it. No apology tucked inside. Just the truth as he knew it. I met his gaze and let the moment stand. I have you, I said. That is not a contract. It is a promise. If you feel yourself fading, you call me back. If you forget your breath, I will count with you. If you miss the step, I will wait at the landing. He smiled again, broader now, teeth bright in the dim. You say things like that and I believe I can do this, he said. You can, I said. And when you cannot, we will adjust. That is all any of us do. The walk back was slower, Not because of the rain, but because there was nothing urgent to rush toward or away from. At the door, he hesitated like he was about to say something more. Instead, he caught my sleeve for a second. A small hold. A grounding gesture returned to its source. Inside, we hung our jackets and stood dripping on the mat, laughing at the puddle forming under our shoes. He took a towel from the hook and tossed it to me, then claimed another for himself. The apartment felt warmer again, not because we had turned anything up, but because people can heat a room by choosing each other. He paused in the hallway, half turned back. "Will you do the breathing thing with me tomorrow?" he asked. "Before bed. 10 minutes. Put it on the spreadsheet," I said. "Bossy," he replied, amused. "Efficient," I countered. He shook his head and smiled, that new quiet smile that looked like relief finally finding a place to sit. Then he went to his room. I stood in the kitchen a while longer, listening to the house settle, to the gentle patter on the window, to the way my own pulse had slowed without my asking it to. The room between us had not vanished. It had changed. It felt less like a distance and more like a small country we had agreed to explore together, step by step, learning the language and trusting the map we drew as we walked. By the time I turned off the light, I knew something without doubt. Whatever we were building was real. Fragile, yes. Unnamed, yes. But solid enough to hold weight. By the end of that night, Noah's trust felt like a bridge that would not collapse when I set my foot on it. And for the first time in weeks, I went to bed with the sense that, come morning, both of us would still be there, meeting the day with a little more yes. The storm arrived like a curtain pulled across the day. By late afternoon, the sky had folded into itself and the streets turned the color of slate. Wind leaned hard on our windows, the kind of wind that made the building speak in old wooden syllables. Rain came down as if a lake had tipped over the city. I was at the coffee table with a book I was not reading. Noah was on the couch, knees up, sleeves shoved to his elbows. He kept glancing at the windows the way you look at a restless dog, as if the storm might throw itself against the glass and demand to be let in. Power flickered, steadied, flickered again. The apartment had a dim, silvered light that made everything feel closer. "Looks like we are not going out," I said. He nodded. "Guess we finally got our excuse to sit still. We tried a movie." The sound of rain drowned half the dialogue, and the storm kept rewriting the lighting anyway. We watched in silence for a while, two people pretending to be distracted. On the coffee table, our mugs sat cold. On the floor, a half-folded blanket waited like it knew what was coming. A strong gust rattled the panes, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the air in our chests. Noah flinched, not dramatically, just enough to show how strung tight he was. I reached over without thinking and put a hand on his shoulder. It was not a planned gesture. It was a reflex, the way you reach out if a shelf tilts. He went still under my palm. Not frozen, just suddenly present. I started to pull away, but he covered my hand with his and pressed it back down. The message was simple. Stay. I did. The storm filled the room with its blunt music. My hand rested on the warm span of his shoulder, and I could feel the micro-movements of his breath through muscle and fabric. He did not look at me right away. He stared straight ahead, like he was listening to something inside the storm that had nothing to do with rain. After a minute, he exhaled and spoke in a voice softer than the thunder would allow. "I was not honest," he said. "I waited. I told you I wanted help to feel normal," he said, eyes on the far wall. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. I wanted connection. I wanted someone to stand close enough that the noise in my head had to make room. He turned his head then, finally meeting my eyes. If he was embarrassed, he did not hide behind it. He let the feeling be there and carried on. "I was scared to want comfort from a man," he said. "Scared of what it would say about me, about the rules I grew up with, about control. Scared you would say no. Even more scared you would say yes, and I would ruin the only steady thing in my life." The storm seemed to move farther away, even as it hammered the windows. Everything narrowed to his words and the weight of his hand on mine. I swallowed. "Thank you for saying it," I said. "I think I knew parts of that already. The rest helps all of it make sense." He nodded once, as if we had just adjusted a picture that had been hanging crooked. I took a slow breath. I was not honest either, I said. Not with you. Not fully with myself. I told myself I was just being a good roommate, that the noticing did not mean anything, that I could feel what I felt and still keep the line clean. What did you notice? He asked, and the question was not teasing. It invited a truth we had both kept in the dark. The way your laugh arrives before you let it, I said. The way you check if the door is locked twice even though you know it is. The way your shoulders drop half an inch when someone says your name in a warm way. The way you look at the sky like you are remembering a promise you made to yourself. He blinked, and I saw his throat work. And what did that mean? He asked quietly. It meant I care about you, I said. More than I ever planned to. It meant the line was not clean. It was drawn in sand, and tide kept coming in. We sat with that. The movie played scenes for no one. The room felt like a small boat, rocking, held up by water we could not see but chose to trust. Another crack of thunder rolled through. The lights dipped, then went out. The apartment sighed into darkness, save for the thin city glow leaking through rain. Noah reached down, found the blanket, and pulled it over both our legs. It was a thoughtless gesture with a thoughtful weight. The blanket was not just warmth. It was permission to stay close. Is this okay? He asked. Yes, I said, surprised by how steady I sounded. We shifted not toward something reckless, just toward each other. His shoulder leaned into mine. My knee brushed his. Our hands found the middle ground and did not try to solve it. The blanket held our legs. The storm sang the same song, but I heard it differently now, as if we had tuned the dial to pick up a frequency of relief. Say something true, he whispered, like a dare and a prayer. I am nervous, I said. I want to do this right. I do not know what right looks like, only that it feels like this. Slow, honest, no proving, just choosing. He let out a breath that trembled a little. I am nervous too, he said. Not because I do not want this, because I do. Lightning flashed. In that brief white moment, I saw the outline of us. Two figures under a shared square of fabric. Our faces turned toward each other with the tentative courage of people who have decided not to lie anymore. When the dark returned, his hand found my wrist, and his thumb rested lightly over my pulse. He did not squeeze. He just kept it there, like checking I was real. Can I ask for something small? He said. Anything, I said. If I get lost, remind me to breathe, he said. If I pull away inside my head, call me back. I will, I said. I promise. We did not rush. We did not try to name the next 5 steps. We let each quiet moment be enough. He set his forehead against mine, tentative at first, then with the gentle certainty of someone who has found the right door. The contact was simple and complete. I could feel the warmth of his skin, the slight damp from the storm in his hair, the slow, careful rhythm of our shared breathing as it fell into sync. His hand shifted from my wrist to my jaw, not to claim anything, only to hold the edge of my face as if to say I am here and so are you. My fingers curled into the blanket, then let go. My free hand found his shoulder again, that familiar anchor, and stayed. Time thinned. The storm kept time for us. We did not speak for long minutes. It was not silence like before, not the careful quiet that kept us from breaking the surface. This was a full quiet, the kind that lets the truth sit between you without burning. I felt my own eyes sting, not from sadness but from the relief of finally not pretending. He must have sensed it. He leaned back just enough to look at me, even in the dark. Hey, he said softly. You are safe. I laughed a little through my nose, the kind of laugh that has more breath than sound. You stole my line, I said. I am returning it, he said. Where it belongs. We stayed like that, a breath apart. He closed his eyes first. I watched the lines of his face soften into something younger and older at once. The look people get when they stop fighting the tide and let the water hold them. I closed my eyes then too, because I wanted to meet him where he was. Another flash of lightning rolled up the walls. The afterimage left stars on my eyelids. I became aware of small things that felt enormous. The warmth of his shoulder pressed along mine, the steady rate of his breathing, the tiny tremor in his hand that gradually calmed against my jaw, the way my own chest settled into a slower cadence just because his had. I wanted this for longer than I admitted, he whispered, barely audible over the rain. Not for what I thought I needed from you, but for what I needed with you. I did not have words for it. I think I do now. What is the word? I asked. Together, he said. It landed like a key in a lock. Not a click of finality, more like a soft turn toward the right direction. The power stayed out. The room cooled under the storm's breath. I tugged the blanket a little higher. He shifted closer. He pressed a quick, cautious kiss to my temple. Not a claim, not a test. A thank you in a language that had very few words. I felt my throat tighten and loosen in the same second. I did not try to respond with anything large. I turned and pressed my mouth to his hairline. A quiet answer that said, I hear you and I am here too. We did not push it farther. The night did not ask us to. The point was not to win anything. The point was to stop losing ourselves to fear. We leaned into the couch and into each other, and when the next long roll of thunder came, it sounded less like a warning and more like a lullaby sung by a sky that had seen this before. Stay, he said, already drifting, the word thick with sleep. I am not going anywhere, I said. He nodded, a small movement against me. His hand found my forearm under the blanket and rested there. Not gripping, just present. Bit by bit, the storm's volume lowered itself. Our breathing kept the beat. The apartment, dark and humming, felt like a room we had built out of honesty and a borrowed quilt. I thought about all the advice I had given him in the past weeks. Slow down. Notice. Breathe. It turned out the advice had always been a map for both of us. I followed it now. I noticed the pleasant ache of a day giving way to night. The way trust can make even a worn-out couch feel like a sanctuary. The way the line between friend and something more does not always cross with a trumpet, but sometimes with a shared blanket and a steady hand. When sleep came, it did not take either of us by surprise. We slid into it side by side, our shoulders touching, our hands relaxed where they had landed. No lines were announced. None needed to be. We fell asleep in the middle of a truth we had finally allowed to exist, and the storm, satisfied, kept watch at the window until morning. Morning arrived like an apology the sky wasn't sure how to make. The storm had wrung itself out overnight, leaving the streets washed and pale. In our living room, the gray light softened the edges of everything. The coffee table, the blanket kicked to the floor, the dent we'd left in the couch cushions. I woke to the quiet and the echo of his weight along my shoulder, even though he wasn't there anymore. Noah moved in the kitchen with the hush of someone trying not to wake a roommate, even though I was already awake. Cabinet doors opened and closed with care. Pan hissed. The faint smell of toast drifted down the hall and settled into the doorway of my room like a peace offering. I sat up slowly, pulling on a t-shirt, feeling the small aftershocks of the night in my chest. Not fear, not regret. Something steadier. I found myself smiling at nothing, then caught it and let my face return to neutral. Habit. When I stepped into the kitchen, Noah kept his eyes on the skillet. Morning, he said, too casual, his voice landing a little off-center. Morning, I answered, matching his tone but gentler. Smells good. Eggs, he said, as if he were announcing a discovery. And toast. Bold choices, I said lightly. He huffed a sound that wanted to be a laugh and didn't quite make it. He slid eggs onto 2 plates, placed them on the table, and busied himself with the butter as if it were a complex machine. I watched the line of his shoulders. The small tension there wasn't defensive. It was something else. The carefulness of someone who wants to do right and is afraid of stepping on the new floor too hard. We sat. We ate. Forks and chairs carried the conversation for a while. Halfway through, he reached for the salt and almost knocked over his water. He caught the glass, winced and muttered, "Sorry." To no one in particular. "It's okay," I said. Table survived worse. A few more bites. Then he tried again. About last night. I let the words arrive without rushing to meet them. Yeah. He kept his gaze on his plate. I'm not sure how to be today. He paused, searching. I don't regret anything. Just when daylight shows up, things look different. I worry I said too much, or not enough, or made something harder for you. The instinct to sweep it away, to say, we're fine, rose up. I let it pass. You didn't make anything harder, I said. If anything, you made it more honest. That's work, but it's not hard in the bad way. He risked a glance. Our eyes caught, then he looked back at the eggs, as if they were giving him notes on how to be humble. I couldn't look at you when I woke up, he admitted. Not because I wanted to run, because I didn't know whether to say good morning or thank you first. Both work, I said, and this time my smile stayed. Something in him unlatched at that. Not a dramatic shift, more like a clasp loosening on a knotted rope. We finished breakfast without ceremony. He gathered our plates. I stood and took them from him at the sink. Our hands touched in the exchange. Nothing choreographed, nothing seized. A small, ordinary contact that didn't have to prove anything. He let his fingers rest against mine a fraction longer than necessary. I didn't move. I'm going to run a load of laundry, he said, softer now. I'll vacuum, I offered. Teamwork, he said, and the word held. The day unfolded in simple tasks. He sorted clothes, machinery thumping a steady, workmanlike rhythm in the laundry closet. I vacuumed the living room, pausing to rescue a sock that had taken refuge under the couch. He wiped down the counters. I took out the trash. At one point we reached for the same roll of paper towels and both said, sorry, at the same time, then laughed at the echo. It wasn't loud laughter. It was the sound of a door easing open on hinges that had been oiled. I feel alive today, he said. Not hyped, not manic, just present. I don't know how to explain it without it sounding like a commercial for deep breathing and toast. You don't have to explain, I said. You just did. He exhaled, a little surprised laugh chasing the breath. It's the first time in months I felt grounded, like my feet and my thoughts are part of the same body. Hold on to that sentence, I said. We'll need it again. He nodded and we let the room keep its quiet. In the early evening we cooked together. It was clumsy and perfect. He chopped onions. I cried and lied about it. He teased me for the slanted carrot coins. I called his garlic ambitiously rustic. At one point he reached past me for the pepper grinder, and his forearm brushed mine. We both went still for a second, not because we were startled, but because something in the contact confirmed what we had said and not said. Then he smiled, finished with the pepper, and slid the pan into the oven like a man placing a letter in a mailbox he trusted. We ate at the table with the window open, letting the last of the storm's cool breath in. He told a story about a collapsed delivery of drywall at work and how his crew had fixed it by refusing to pretend it wasn't broken. I told him about a client who kept liking my emails but not my proposals. We reenacted the world's most polite rejection with cutlery and a dramatic sigh. When he laughed, it was easier than in the morning, and when I laughed, it came from the middle of me. After dinner, the quiet returned, but it had changed again. It wasn't the old carefulness or the post-storm hush. It was comfortable, like a well-worn sweater you find at the back of the chair and put on without thinking. We took our mugs to the couch. He hesitated, a small, visible calculation, then sat close. Not pressed against me, not distant. Close enough that our legs understood the message before our mouths did. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. When I said I needed connection, not just help, he began, cautious. Did that make you feel like I was using you to fix me? No, I said. It made me feel like you trusted me to sit with you while you fixed yourself. He took that in, slow, grateful. That matters, he said. I've been afraid that wanting comfort made me weak. I think I'm starting to understand it makes me human. Huge upgrade, I said. He smiled. You and your upgrades. Someone has to keep the software running. He tapped his chest. Old hardware, new code. Works for me. We didn't say more. It turned dark outside, the kind of clear city night that edits the storm out of its memory. The neighbor's TV flickered across the balcony like silent subtitles. Inside, our apartment felt settled. No tension tugging at the corners. No test we had to pass before bed. He turned his mug in his hands. "I keep trying to find a label for this," he admitted. "For us. And the labels feel too small. Or too loud." "We can let the labels catch up later," I said. "We already know what we are doing, choosing, being kind, being brave, breathing through weird moments. That's enough of a name for now." He nodded, eyes going soft in that way I'd started to recognize as relief arriving. "I can live with that." He set his mug down and shifted, closing the small distance between us. His head dipped to my shoulder without drama, without fear, the way a tired person finds the right pillow and lets themselves rest. My hand found the back of his hoodie and stayed there, light and steady. I felt his breath slow against my side, the minute weight of trust settling like a blanket. "Thank you," he murmured. Not for the first time, but with a new center. "For what?" I asked, even though I knew. "For staying when I shook," he said. "For not making it a test. For letting me be a person, not a problem." "You're not a problem," I said. "You're my person." The words came out before I could vet them, true and simple, and I didn't call them back. He went very still, not with fear, more like he was letting the words map to a body. Then I felt the smallest nod against my shoulder. "I like that," he whispered. "I can hold that." We stayed like that until the movie we weren't watching ended, until the credits rolled over the room in thin white lines. I didn't move. He didn't either. When he finally straightened, it was slow, unhurried. He looked at me the way people look at a shore they didn't think they'd reach. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," I confirmed. "And the day after. We'll keep it simple." He smiled, a soft hallelujah. He stood, turned off the lamp, and the room eased into dark. At his doorway he paused once more. "I feel alive," he said, testing the phrase in the quiet like a string on a guitar. It rang true. "I know," I said. "Me too." He disappeared into his room. I sat in the dark a while, listening to the apartment breathe. The storm had come and gone, but the real weather had shifted inside us. Pressure changing, clouds parting. The first steady day after a long season. We had crossed a line without breaking anything. We were learning the new map by walking it. Touch had become a language. Trust had become a roof. Acceptance had turned a couch into a place you could belong. It wasn't fireworks. It was better. A pilot light catching, a small steady flame holding its ground against the draft, warm enough to gather around. By the time I went to bed, the silence felt earned, and in that earned quiet I understood something plain and enormous. He didn't have to be fixed to be loved. He only had to be seen, and so did I. Weeks passed, and the storm that once sat between us had become a memory we no longer tiptoed around. The apartment felt lighter now, the air not so full of unsaid things. Our lives had slipped into an easier rhythm, one that didn't need explaining. Mornings began with the soft sounds of routine, the clatter of the coffee grinder, the hum of the kettle, the muted rhythm of two people learning to share space without walking on the edges of it. Sometimes he'd pour me a cup before I even made it to the kitchen, sliding it across the counter with a quiet, "Here." Sometimes I'd leave a note on his lunchbox. "Breathe today. Don't overthink." Little exchanges that said more than conversation ever could. The tension that once lingered like smoke after a match had turned into something calmer. A low, steady flame. We didn't name what we were, but the word together had started to live between us anyway. Evenings were the best part. After long days, we'd end up on the couch, half watching whatever was on TV, half talking about nothing, the kind of conversations that drifted without needing to land anywhere. He'd stretch his legs over the coffee table. I'd steal his blanket. Sometimes our hands would brush when we reached for the same bowl of popcorn, and neither of us would move away anymore. It wasn't romance in the movie sense, no grand gestures, no declarations, just the simple act of showing up. I started to realize that love doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it's a lamp left on so someone doesn't come home to darkness. One night, After dinner, he sat across from me, absently turning his fork between his fingers. He had that look, the one that meant he was trying to find words that mattered. "I did something today," he said, eyes fixed on the table. "Yeah. I finally called one of those therapists I told you about." I felt a small wave of warmth rise in my chest. "That's great, Noah." He nodded. "Had the first session last week, actually. Didn't want to say anything until I was sure I wouldn't chicken out." "How was it?" He shrugged, but there was a lightness in it I hadn't seen before. "Weird at first." She asked what brought me there, and I said, "I don't know who I am when I'm not trying to be useful." I set my fork down. "That's honest." "Yeah," he said. And then I told her about feeling disconnected, about losing touch with my own body and emotions, about how I used to think strength meant not needing anyone. He paused, the silence stretching gently between us. "And then," he added, glancing at me, "I told her about you." I froze for a second. "Me?" He nodded. "I told her I started breathing again because someone reminded me how. That I started trusting people again because one person didn't flinch when I was at my worst." For a moment, the room blurred around the edges. The sound of the city outside, traffic, distant music, laughter from the street, faded into something soft and far away. "Noah." He shook his head slightly. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not trying to be poetic. I just needed to say it. You gave me permission to be human again. And that's not something I can ever forget." I smiled, though it came with a lump in my throat. "You did all the work. I just kept the light on." "Yeah," he said quietly, his voice almost breaking into a smile. "But you made sure I didn't walk past the door." We finished dinner without speaking much after that, but it wasn't an awkward silence. It was full, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Later, he washed the dishes while I dried them. The rhythm of it was easy, domestic, like a language we'd both become fluent in. Every so often our hands brushed over the same plate, and neither of us pulled away. When the last dish was stacked, he turned off the tap and leaned against the counter beside me. "You ever think about how weird this all is?" he asked. "What part?" "Life," he said, smirking. "How it can fall apart and still find a way to rebuild itself into something better." I nodded. "I think about it a lot." He looked at me then, eyes steady. "Do you ever regret it?" "That night, what we crossed." I thought about it, really thought. About the storm, the silence, the fear. About the moment his forehead rested against mine and everything unspoken finally had a place to breathe. "No," I said. "Not even a little." He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for weeks. "Me neither." After that, we didn't talk about it again. We didn't need to. The understanding had settled between us. Not heavy, not fragile, just there. Days blurred into weeks. Work, meals, laughter that came easier now. He started going to therapy every Thursday. Sometimes he'd come home and tell me something his therapist said. Other times he'd just sit next to me, quiet, content. I learned not to fill his silences. They were no longer walls, just spaces he needed to sit inside. One night, after one of his sessions, we sat on the balcony. The city glowed below us, small and infinite at the same time. The air smelled faintly of rain again, as if the world wanted to remind us how far we'd come. He leaned forward on his knees. "You ever wonder what makes people stay?" "Stay where?" I asked. "In someone's life," he said. "Through the hard parts. Through the boring parts." I looked out at the city lights flickering like tiny promises. "Maybe it's the quiet things," I said. "The breakfasts, the listening, the times when nothing needs fixing, but you show up anyway." He smiled at that, slow and thoughtful. "Yeah, I like that." We fell into silence again, but it wasn't the awkward kind that used to hang between us. This one hummed softly, alive with something unspoken and safe. After a while, I felt his shoulder brush mine. It was an accidental touch that neither of us corrected. We sat like that, watching the city move under us. People in windows, cars at lights, strangers passing, everyone carrying their own invisible stories. I could feel the rhythm of his breathing beside me. Slow, calm, present. "Hey, Matt." "Yeah." He hesitated, then said, "I think I'm okay." The words were simple, but they landed like something holy. I turned to look at him. "Yeah," I said softly. "You are." He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't try to prove anything. Just lives there quietly. The night stretched on, unhurried. I leaned back against the chair, shoulders touching his again. Somewhere below, a siren wailed and faded into distance. The air was cool, the city alive. Inside, everything felt still. And I realized then that connection doesn't always start with attraction, or confession, or some perfectly timed spark. Sometimes it begins with compassion, with sitting beside someone when the world feels too heavy, and saying nothing until they remember how to breathe. He came to me once asking to fix something broken inside him. And maybe, in his own way, he did. But the truth was simpler. We had both been searching for wholeness, and somewhere between the silence, the laughter, and the long nights of just being, we'd found it. Not in each other, but with each other. As the city lights shimmered in the glass door, I thought about all the small ways people heal. Not through grand gestures, but through presence. Through staying. Through daring to care, even when the rules say you shouldn't. Our shoulders stayed touching, steady and warm. Neither of us said goodnight for a long time. The air between us was quiet, and in that quiet was everything we hadn't needed to say. He had come to me asking to fix something inside him, but in the end, we both learned what it means to feel whole. If it touched you, if you've ever found healing, comfort, or quiet connection where you least expected it, please like the video, subscribe, and help the channel grow. What do you think made Matt and Noah's connection so powerful? Was it love, friendship, or something deeper that words can't quite name? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories.